The correct answer on this one is aquifer. So most of you got it right. Some of you chose precipitation. Precipitation is when water comes out of the sky, rain, snow. Aquifer is when it goes into the ground. This is an aquifer right here. Okay. Next one, which is surface water? A, topsoil, B, cave, or C, river? Which is surface water? It looks like some of you got it right. Some of you actually missed this one again. Topsoil is dirt, soil, ground. Has nothing to do with water really, except water goes into it. Cave, I haven't really talked about a cave yet. Caves are made from water, but they're not at the surface, the top. So here you can see the water table. And look what happens when the water table is above the ground on top. It makes a river. So things like lakes, rivers, streams, those are called surface water. Anything underneath, like an aquifer, is called ground water. Surface on top, ground underneath. The speed, how fast water moves in soil, is A, saturation, B, porosity, or C, permeability. You guys did much better today on this one. Yesterday, most of us missed it. The correct answer is C, permeability is how fast, ability, to permeate, to go into the soil or through it. Saturate just means it's wet, and porosity means it has holes. So those are our kind of right answer, but they're not how fast. How fast does it get wet and fill up the spaces in the soil? Since we were talking about groundwater, water that's underneath, inside the earth, there are layers. We've got the crust. Underneath that is called the mantle. And then we've got the outer core and the inner core. So the crust is very thin, like the peel on an apple or like the shell on an egg. And if we go through that crust, it gets really hot. The mantle is hot. And so water that's in the crust, in places where the crust is very thin, can get hot. And these are places in the United States, mostly out west, a lot of them along what we call plate boundary, a little bit under the mountains here. These are places where we have what are called hot springs. So the groundwater is hot. And sometimes the groundwater is more than just hot. It can even be boiling, really, really hot. This is in a place called Yellowstone, which is out by Wyoming. It's a big national park, and they have what are called natural hot springs. Here you can see they're kind of beautiful, the colors. Look how deep that looks. That water is going down into the ground and being heated up by magma underneath. And what happens is with the different temperatures, you get different minerals in the water. And these minerals are what make the different colors. You can see how beautiful the different colors are from the different minerals. So that's hot boiling water. You cannot go in that water. It would kill you. It would hurt you. And look what the water does to the ground. It ruins the ground, right? We don't have anything growing there, no plants. It's very pretty, but very dangerous. See, there's a little trail they made so you can get closer to it. Now, when you have a bunch of clay, remember we have sand is kind of big, silt is much smaller, and clay is really, really tiny. When we have clay, and it gets hot and melted, it forms gooey mud. And that mud can bubble and boil and spit. And we call that a paint pot. But sometimes the water underneath is trapped. It's in a little pocket. And it heats up so much in that pocket that it can boil and explode and come out of the ground like this in a bunch of steam. You might have heard this before in a tea kettle on a stove. And when the water gets hot in the tea kettle, it comes out the top and the tea kettle whistles. And that's how you know that the water is ready. This is kind of the same thing. It's called a geyser. Geyser, geyser. Geyser is hot groundwater that explodes or erupts, is what we say, comes out of the ground. So here's what's going on with all three of those. We've got a heat source. It's hot. That's the magma in the mantle. And we've got different places where there's groundwater. And this one, it just goes up to the top and heats the little pond. That's called a hot spring. And this one goes up and it melts the clay. And that's called a mud pot. But look at this one. It goes up and it's got a little pocket, a place where it stops. And so the water sits there and gets hot, and the heat is trapped, has a roof on the top. And eventually it gets so hot that it boils and it goes shooting out the tiny little top. So it has to get fat and then skinny to make it go up out of the ground like this. Some of these geysers can go way up in the air, depending on how much pressure is built up. Most people are pretty brave. They're very close to that. That is still boiling water. It could hurt you. This is probably the most famous geyser, although in my opinion, it's not the prettiest. I like the one I just showed you. But this one is called Old Faithful. Old Faithful is a geyser in Yellowstone. You can see this is a big park and it's popular. This is a national park and they have built a big hotel. We call this a lodge, and people can stay there overnight. It's very busy though. You have to get a reservation. And here's a little sidewalk they built, and they even have places to sit. So you can sit and wait for Old Faithful to blow up each day. And it actually blows up pretty regularly, like on a schedule. It's not perfect. It's about within 10 to 15 minutes each time. But it takes about an hour and a half or so for it to build up steam and then explode. You can see once again, it kind of ruins the ground, all that hot water. And it is very dangerous, so that's why they keep you far away. There's a shot from the other side. You can see the benches and the people that were waiting to watch Old Faithful shoot up in the sky. Okay, I think we'll stop there today. That is hot water, hot groundwater. We've got hot springs, it's like a lake. We've got paint pots, which are mud and clay. And then we've got geysers that shoot up in the sky.